working in one of the coldest regions on Earth. A 1,000-kilometer trip through the ice desert of Siberia, at temperatures as low as minus 45 degrees Celsius.
We could slip off here any second.
Breaking down is a disaster.
We don't have a spare tire for the trailer anymore.
These men brave the cold because they're trained ice road truckers. But how tough is this job? And what do you have to bring to the table? We escorted a squad of Russian truckers and found out. The task? To transport a bulldozer from the city of Magadan 1,000 kilometers through ice and snow to a gold mine. The freight? A bulldozer with a length of almost 12 meters, a height of almost 5 meters, and a width of almost 5.5 meters. It weighs 86 tons. Denis Afarizovich Rafikov is the ice road trucker.
We have experience in transporting cargo, such as the 475. We know our way around really big machines.
The challenge? The bulldozer is almost as wide as the truck that's supposed to transport it. If the bulldozer drives onto the loading bed at a slight angle, it could tip over. In addition, the cargo must drive over the tires at full weight without destroying them. Ice road truckers have to be smart. To protect the tires, they put old ones on top of new ones. Job done. Bring on the bulldozer.
It's really heavy.
All done. The bulldozer is safely on the back of the truck.
Easy, easy, easy. Stop, stop.
Now, on to Denis's real task, maneuvering the cargo safely through the ice desert. His vehicle? A truck 22.5 meters long and weighing 138 tons.
There can be problems with the wheels, there can be problems with the axle bearings, or with the air brakes, because the cargo is so incredibly heavy.
Denis is one of the company's most experienced ice road truckers. He's been doing this freezing cold job for many years. His colleague Vanya, however, is still a greenhorn. He's also heading off into the cold today. Their destination? A gold mine in the middle of nowhere. Gold digging is scheduled to start here in a few days. If the bulldozer doesn't arrive on time, it could lose the business millions. The convoy is ready for departure, but not without the veteran ice road trucker, Supervisor Alexander Valentinovich Sabinsky.
I am mainly responsible for the downhill stretch in the mountain passes. I have to check constantly whether it is slippery and whether the vehicles or the cargo are damaged.
The ice-cold job begins in the middle of the night, but the truckers have to be wide awake at all times. They can't afford to make mistakes or allow technical deficiencies. That's because there's no repair shop or breakdown service in Siberia's ice desert. If you break down here, it can be quite dangerous at minus 45 degrees. And there can't be any delays in the schedule, because that wouldn't only be bad for the client, Because one of the most important rules for ice truckers is to stay on schedule. They earn their money mainly in the winter months. The more tours they can do, the more money is left over for the rest of the year. Shortly before the first stopover, however, the cold already starts to have an effect. Antifreeze is leaking from Dennis's truck, and they can't afford to lose that at these sub-zero temperatures. Another important ice trucker rule: never switch off the engine, as it would freeze up within a few minutes. But Dennis can solve the problem quickly while the engine is running, thanks to his many years of experience.
The hose is old, so the pipe couldn't withstand the pressure any longer. But now everything's okay again.
After a short night's rest, the tour continues. The truckers want to cover 400 kilometers on this next stage, over 5 steep mountain passes, until they reach the most important stopover of the tour, the only gas station in the Siberian tundra. But right at the start, the first challenge of this difficult stage is already waiting: getting the bulldozer off the back of the truck.
Now we have to unload the bulldozer. This ascent is too slippery. The following descent too steep. With that bulldozer, my truck would never make it. We could even slide down the slope.
The problem is that a steep slope creates so-called contact pressure, which pushes the truck down with a force of up to 9 tons. If the weight of the load is added to this, the truck can lose grip and start to slip. This is also the problem going downhill. If the load is too heavy, it can put too much strain on the brake pads. So, take off the bulldozer and cross over the mountain without it. Supervisor Valentinovich also insists on snow chains for the trucks. Dennis sticks to this, but Greenhorn Vanya rushes up the mountain without chains. While Dennis unloads the bulldozer, it happens.
Look over there!
He didn't put the fucking chains on!
Greenhorn Vanya is stuck on the mountain, a dangerous situation. Supervisor Valentinovich rushes to help. Then suddenly, Vanya starts moving again and makes it out of his predicament by himself. Though he still gets into trouble for his actions. Remember, always follow the supervisor's instructions. Meanwhile, the bulldozer is slowly but surely making its way over the mountain. Once they're back down the hill, the bulldozer gets loaded back up and the journey continues. Loading and unloading is an enormous strain for the truck each time, especially for the tires. The smallest cracks can form here, which can quickly cause them to burst in these enormous temperature fluctuations. This time, everything goes well.
Loading's done, everything seems to have worked out. Now we can move on. The mine is waiting for us.
In order to keep to the schedule, the truckers no longer take a break, driving through the cold day and night. A real trucker has to endure that too. Shortly before the important stop at the gas station, the strain on the materials finally claims a victim. A tire has burst. That means unloading the bulldozer and changing tires at minus 45 degrees. The big problem is
We no longer have a spare wheel for the trailer. We only have some left for the truck. And they're too big.
their nerves are in tatters. The cold and the night shifts are taking their toll. But thanks to the Russian art of improvisation, even the oversized tires hold. But now the bulldozer has to get back on the trailer.
Pull it over a little. I'll never get it up like this.
In these situations, the truckers still have to remain calm, because panic in the ice desert can have fatal consequences. After 6 exhausting attempts, the bulldozer is finally back in its place.
We did it. That was really difficult. It's so dark you can't see a thing.
After a total delay of 3 hours, the truckers finally reached the filling station. Time for a well-deserved break from the ice-cold temperatures. The final stage, and there's only one obstacle in the way. A provisional bridge, built only from logs, with a little earth to fill the gaps. A simple construction. But perhaps too simple for 138 tons. The bridge seems to be holding. The convoy can continue. Mission accomplished. The last few kilometers to the gold mine. Then the Ice Road truckers will have made it. They'll deliver the bulldozer to the gold mine, right on schedule. The client is satisfied.
It's a very powerful machine. We have to dig an extreme amount of gold out of the ground this summer, and only machines like this bulldozer can do it.
And trucker Dennis is also satisfied with his work.
I'm happy. In spite of all the difficulties, we have successfully delivered our load to its destination.
The bulldozer can now begin its work in the gold mine, and the Ice Road truckers can move on to their next job, at temperatures as low as minus 45 degrees. Conclusion: this is definitely one of the hardest jobs in the world. A giant and a horsepower monster on their way across the sea.
One of the wires of the connection could break.
Defying all dangers.
It's really dangerous to work here, especially when the weather is moving. I mean, the vessel is moving all the time.
The largest tugboat pulling the largest drilling ship. A gigantic transport halfway around the world. The West Bolster, the largest semi-submersible drilling vessel in the world. 122 meters long, weighing 31,000 tons, as heavy as 55 Airbus A380s. With a maximum drilling depth of 12 kilometers, it could drill through Mount Everest 1.5 times. And at its highest point, it measures 122 meters. This drilling ship has just come off the production line and has to go halfway around the world. From the shipyard in South Korea to Tenerife. Oscar Wiklund is responsible for making sure everything works on the West Bolster.
It's really important that everything of our equipment we have on decks around the rig, which are loose, it's secured like this. Because during the transit we do expect and can expect to have some movements, some bad weather, strong winds, and we need to be prepared for that.
There's only one thing that can transport this gigantic drilling ship, the most powerful tugboat in the world, the ALP Striker. 89 meters long, 21 meters wide, and a top speed of 35 kilometers per hour. Thanks to its 24,000 horsepower engine, it has a pulling power of 309 tons. Captain of this horsepower monster is Kees Pronk.
It's a huge drilling rig. According to the papers, it's one of the biggest drilling rigs in the world. So it's also very nice that the biggest ocean-going tug will tow the biggest drilling rig. Of course, it's a challenge. It's a trip halfway around the world. We can expect some bad weather, of course, during the voyage.
But why this risky transport? Normally, semi-submersible transport ships carry such heavy loads as oil platforms. But the West Bolster has a very special drive system which makes normal transport impossible. A total of 8 thrusters on the bottom of the ship provide stability and move it from one location to the next. Transportation by a semi-submersible would destroy the thrusters. Now it's time to weigh anchor on the West Bolster. Each of them weighs 18 tons. That's why this is a job for cranes. In the meantime, the star of the mission is arriving at the shipping company, the ALP Striker. The next morning. Now, the ALP Striker has to moor up with the huge drilling ship, a connection which is to last for 3 months. The tugboat then pulls 31,000 tons behind it. This only works thanks to an ingenious system. First, the crew attaches a steel cable in combination with massive chains to the floats. The so-called delta plate connects these 2 cables with the 8 centimeter thick towing cable of the ALP Striker. This triangular construction distributes the tensile forces evenly. This makes the connection more durable and improves maneuverability. 2 emergency ropes also ensure that the West Bolster can re-establish the connection should it break off in a storm. So much for the theory. Now, over to the practical part. A chain weighs up to 4 tons, and the crew has to position everything precisely. No easy task. Captain Kees is getting a little nervous.
Guys, above the pin you have a vertical bar, that's for hammering. Use the vertical bar on top of it for hammering. Yes, thank you. There is always a small chance that something could happen, like one of the wires of the connection could break.
Now the most important moment. The crew connects all the chains to the connector, the delta plate. It will constantly be underwater during transport and therefore cannot be monitored along the way. The crucial moment. Tension is applied to the chains. Will the construction hold? Everything is fine. The transport journey halfway round the world can begin. The ALP Striker will now pull a weight of 31,000 tons behind it for 3 months, thanks only to its gigantic pulling power. The drilling ship floats up to 13 meters below the water surface. This means an enormous resistance for the tug. The ALP Striker must therefore always drive at full throttle. To avoid any malfunctions, a mechanic checks the engine room every 4 hours. He pays special attention to the 4 6,100 horsepower engines that drive the ship and the turbine shafts. They run through the entire ship. After half an hour, the tour of inspection is over.
So round is done, all okay?
About half of the trip transporting this giant has been completed. That means a big stop ashore to refuel and replenish supplies. During the journey, the transport cable is completely extended over a length of 2 kilometers. Due to its heavy weight, it hangs up to 120 meters below the surface. If the water becomes shallower, the chain can drag on the ground and break or tear. So if it's heading towards the coast, the crew has to shorten the length of the chain considerably. Sounds simple, but the danger for the crew is enormous, because a 10-centimeter thick rubber cover protects the cable from damage. The crew has to loosen it in order to shorten the cable.
Striker, be stuck.
Yes, bridge deck, go ahead.
Yeah, we're ready now.
Yeah, okay, you can start removing the clamps for the fixed protectors.
Roger that, start removing the clamps.
During the entire process, the cable is under extreme tension.
It's really dangerous to work here, especially when the weather is moving. I mean, the vessel is moving all the time, so you have to be very careful, and also on the wire. You have to be very careful on it, and you have to watch each other.
A single wave could cause the cable to swing and hit a crew member, with disastrous consequences.
Okay. Dun nyo natalhin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, please heave up the wire.
The towing cable is attached to a huge winch. It can wind up to 13 meters per minute, and so bring the west bolster closer to the ALP Striker, meter by meter. Meanwhile, the transport is approaching the coast of Namibia, which they've reached on schedule after a month at sea.
Nice to see some land again after 4 weeks.
At the port of Walvis Bay in Namibia, it's time to refuel and stock up on supplies. During that time, the west bolster is not connected to the ALP Striker, but she stays in her designated position. This is because a radar system always checks the surroundings, the wind and the wave strength. Using this data, the system automatically adjusts the thrusters and their position. This keeps the drilling vessel in position without an anchor, with an accuracy of ½ meter, even in waves of up to 5 meters high. After less than 24 hours in Namibia, the ALP Striker weighs anchor again. The last stage of the trip is about to begin. From Walvis Bay in Namibia, along the African coast, to Santa Cruz on Tenerife. And everything goes according to plan. Without any further incidents, the ALP Striker and the West Bolster reach the port of Tenerife. The crew has thus covered a total of 25,204 kilometers across 3 oceans. Now all they have to do is release the connecting cable.
For the disconnection operations, everything looks good. I don't expect any big problems. The weather is perfect, not much wind, not much sea.
And after 3 hours, it's done.
One moment, okay. Bolster, Striker.
Striker, Bolster, all right.
Yeah, well, after 3 months, that's finished.
Beautiful, appreciate all the cooperation, all the help. It was done in a full professional way. Everything was safely done. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, also same from our side. Happy to bring you over here, and let's hope till next time.
The strongest tugboat in the world has thus safely delivered the world's largest semi-submersible drilling vessel to its place of operation. Pictures of outer space, each of them spectacular. But this one could be the most spectacular of them all. It's the first real picture of a black hole. Only made possible by the combination of several super telescopes around the world. The largest and most powerful of these, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array, ALMA for short. Located in the middle of the Atacama Desert in the Chilean Andes. A total of 66 portable antennas capture images here that mankind would otherwise never be able to see. ALMA is a collaboration between Europe, North America and East Asia. They have jointly financed this approximately $1.4 billion project. Each of the 66 antennas delivers important information to the data center. Celia Verdugo is one of those responsible for reading them. She is the first port of call for all the data from the antennas. Her job is to investigate nothing less than the origin of the universe. That's why she needs every single antenna.
Every antenna is essential for 2 main reasons. Why we have 66 antennas? To collect more light coming from the universe, meaning that we can observe very faint objects in the sky and we can collect more sensitivity out of those objects, and also to obtain a better resolution on the images we are creating.
With the strongest large millimeter array, Celia is constantly making new discoveries about the universe, like the first picture of a black hole.
I don't know if humbling, but it does make me even more curious of the universe we are living in. Every new result we get, every new image, every new paper that's published raises even more questions of what is the kind of the universe we are living in. There are many secrets still to be discovered. Of course, we always want to go further. We always want to break the new frontiers of knowledge and technical availabilities we have. And that's really motivating, actually.
To enable them to constantly take new pictures and obtain new research results, the scientists benefit from one thing. The antennas are transportable.
There are astronomers that are observing parts of the sky that really need a high resolution, and for that we need to move our antennas around to make the best out of our array, you see? So we couldn't do this without the transporters that we have and all the engineering team that takes care of the maintenance of the antennas.
These are the men for the rough stuff. But theirs is no lesser contribution to the first picture of a black hole. Alfredo and his crew. They make transporting the antenna possible. Before every transport, Alfredo undergoes a medical checkup because the job in the desert is tough.
Good morning. Can I come in?
The working conditions at an altitude of 5,000 meters are extreme. Therefore, a doctor examines their vital parameters each time in advance.
Good. Everything fine.
Is everything okay?
Yes, no problem.
Perfect. Thank you.
If you have like a health issue, you could maybe have like a heart attack or maybe like breathing issues or stroke that could like affect your brain. And when we are doing the maneuver of like doing a relocation of the antenna, it's very important to be very aware of what's going on so you don't make any mistakes.
Sunscreen and oxygen cylinders are therefore constant work companions. The task? It's time to change the antenna from the summer to the winter configuration. This means distributing 50 of the 66 antennas in a radius of 16 kilometers in the desert. Alfredo's team has the longest and therefore hardest transport route. To be able to transport the antennas at all, heavy equipment is needed. The transport vehicles are 20 meters long, 10 meters wide, and 6 meters high. Two 680 horsepower diesel engines drive the 135-ton vehicles. Despite their size, the vehicles can maneuver with pinpoint precision, even with a 100-ton antenna on their backs.
Everything ready?
Alfredo can operate the transporter like no other. The journey can begin. For him, a dream job.
Well, I like it. I think it's fun. Yeah, it took me a while to get used to it. But yes, yeah, it's really fun. It's one of the things that I actually most enjoy about this kind of work. Yeah, it's nice to be up here in the mountains, especially because this is a very special place and it has like a energy to it.
And with his work, Alfredo is also part of groundbreaking discoveries, like the image of the black hole. To create even more such images, Alfredo and his team point the antenna's mirror upwards and put the antenna itself into transport position. Then, the vehicle takes up its position. The mechanics now remove 8 huge screws from the antenna platform. Then, they cut the power inside the antenna, and only then can the transporter load up the antenna. Everything goes according to plan. After only 1 hour, the antenna is on the transporter. Now, Alfredo has to transport his freight 8 kilometers through the Chilean desert. The hardest transport route ever. The target position is at the very edge of the area. Slowly, at only 12 kilometers per hour, Alfredo maneuvers his vehicle through the desert. The total weight of the transport is comparable to an Airbus A350. Alfredo must not rush anything, otherwise he could damage his $10 million cargo, and that would be disastrous. But for the research center 2 kilometers away, things just can't go fast enough. Here, the researchers hope that the new antenna position will also produce new information about the universe. One of them is Jeffrey Crew. He was part of the team that captured the image of the black hole, the research station's greatest achievement so far.
Many of us were unprepared for how much our fuzzy picture touched everyone's lives. We've all grown up hearing about black holes. They play a role in movies, getting sucked into the event horizon and so forth. And, from a scientific perspective, we've done everything but see a black hole. So it really does cement this notion that there are these objects in our universe which are incomprehensible to us. They're far beyond what we see in our daily lives. And that's really inspirational.
An incredible team effort, made up of 8 satellite systems, 5 countries, and scientists from all over the world. The next goal, to find out more about cosmic origins, the birth of stars, and the universe as a whole. ALMA plays a key role in this research.
One of the nice things about coming to ALMA is that it has a beautiful night sky. You can see the Milky Way galaxy clearly most nights without a moon. And if you look up, you see billions of uncountable numbers of stars. And this object is in a distant galaxy of which there are uncountable trillions of galaxies. And here we are peering into the innermost heart of that galaxy to see this black hole. So yes, if you take it all in, you realize that you're a very small part of this very interesting universe, and it is quite humbling.
But for the next discovery, the antenna still needs to be placed in its new position. In the meantime, Alfredo has arrived at his destination with his cargo. He and his crew now only have to anchor the bottom of the antenna again and make sure that the connection to the research station works perfectly as soon as the cables are reattached. Using a remote control unit, he adjusts the antenna until it reaches its intended location. Ten long minutes later, Alfredo brings the antenna into its final position with pinpoint accuracy. And the connection is set up.
Finished?
Yes, we can switch off the generator.
Okay, I'll do that. We're done as soon as the cable is disconnected.
Really satisfied. And this is like, I think that this is my day. It's already done, almost. If I take the transporter back to the hangar.
Alfredo has done his job. The technology works. Now it's the turn of the scientists, who will soon provide spectacular new images of the universe. Like the first real picture of a genuine black hole. One gigantic freight weighing 390 tons.
Stop.
Where the hell is he going?
On the back of a unique vehicle.
This definitely isn't your everyday transport. This is a Herculean task.
The SPMT, on a trip full of challenges.
You try to think every scenario through, so you always have a solution at hand.
This heavy abnormal load moves through little villages and over wild rivers.
The hard part is driving the 500 plus tons down these slopes with a steady hand, so that it doesn't end up in there.
The journey begins in Förde, in North Rhine-Westphalia. The star amongst transport vehicles is already waiting. The so-called SPMT. It weighs over 110 tons and moves on 20 axles. Each of them can be moved individually, up and down or left and right, designed for particularly heavy loads. Its maximum speed, 17 kilometers per hour. Today's cargo, a power plant generator, 14 meters long, 4 meters high and 4 meters wide. Weight, 390 tons. With this load, the SPMT hits the road. From the narrow streets of Förde, it travels 80 kilometers down the Rhine. Then comes the difficult part. 124 kilometers negotiating bridges, roundabouts and sharp bends. Its destination, the power plant in Neurath. The SPMT has a modular design. This means it can be converted as required, something that will benefit the transport team. Head of the whole operation, Daniel Sobczynski. Once the transport begins, he's in control of everything.
We have a weight of 450 tons and it wants to be moved. So you always have to keep your eyes open. There will be a little bit of excitement.
Another special feature, the SPMT is remote controlled by this man, Andrzej Seichter. The first challenge awaits him, maneuvering the truck and the generator through the yard gate.
Andre, watch out. It's going to the right.
He has a close eye on the 20 axles and thus adapts them to any changes on the roads. This is the only way the load remains safe.
We have a high center of gravity, and if it goes over that point, it will tip over. But it's going fine.
So far. Simply running over a curb can, in the worst case, end in disaster.
Slightest error in driving. A tiny cause could have a big effect. For example, extra handling maneuvers. If worse comes to worse, we could go off the route.
Barely out of the yard, the SPMT's journey continues by river. And steering 450 tons onto a barge is not at all easy for driver Andre.
The hard part is driving the 500 plus tons down these slopes with a steady hand, so that it doesn't end up in there.
Further, further.
With pinpoint accuracy, Andrei moves the 20 axles over the temporary bridge onto the boat, without any incidents. Now the SPMT and the generator will head down the Rhine for a day and a half. A short break for the crew. Back ashore, the SPMT begins its first conversion, because the complicated part of the journey is about to start. To master this, so-called vessel bridges are used. These pieces of equipment carry the generator in their center in order to distribute the weight to as many axles as possible. The crew can also adjust the height of the load as required. After conversion, the SPMT reaches a length of over 100 meters. This does not necessarily make it easier to maneuver. Daniel and his crew now have to monitor even more axles.
Of course you only have 2 eyes, but technically you'd need 6. Because you always have to look everywhere. Luckily, we're a well-versed team, so we know what we have to pay attention to.
The SPMT has to prove what its technology can do right away. This is because an underpass is now facing the convoy. Therefore, the crew lowers the cargo as best they can, so that the generator can fit under the bridge. The clearance space is just a few inches. Challenge completed. Now it's on to the highway. But the bridges there are not designed for such an enormous weight. Once again, the crew benefits from the SPMT's flexibility.
Before Andrei's under it, roll straight.
They attach 6 more axles to distribute the load's weight even further. This means that the motorway bridges and tarmac should survive the transport without damage. The plan works. For the final section, there is only one more conversion to be done. The SPMT will be fitted with 8 additional axles on each side to distribute the transport weight even further. This gives it a total length of 105 meters. The big problem, ahead of them, en route, is a roundabout with a diameter of only 40 meters. This extremely difficult stage only works in daylight. To cause as little traffic disruption as possible, 2 teams work simultaneously. They bring the SPMT up to its maximum length of 105 meters. That means 798 tons distributed over 52 axles.
With a total length of over 100 meters, taking a roundabout can be quite exciting. Some people can't manage that with a car. Make sure that the wheels don't dig into the ground, Andrei. Get it back on solid ground or we'll never get it back out. We've laid plates here, but the ground is still very soft. Now we have to make sure that we don't sink in or get stuck. I really have to concentrate now.
The ground is now wet due to the rain. Pulling over 700 tons out of the mud is almost impossible. This makes the crew even more tense.
You're already on the inside shoulder. One tire is in the mud on the inside, still drivable.
Those people need to go away.
Please, everybody who doesn't have to do with the transport, 5 meters back.
Back up behind the tree.
It's easing up a bit on the inside, Daniel. You're back on concrete.
Perfect. Go have a look at front right. He's too close to the barrier.
Haben die nur angerufen vorhin?
Where the hell is he going?
The team checks every axle very carefully. And after a few teething problems, it's looking quite good.
Exit right, no problem.
Careful in the middle. The axles.
The roundabout challenge has almost been overcome.
Brutal, isn't it? With these spatial conditions, there wasn't anything else to do. But in the end, we made it through. It doesn't look nice, but it was nicely done.
Thanks to the flexibility of the SPMT and the perfectly distributed load on all axles, the crew was able to master all challenges and deliver the load to its destination on time at around 1 AM. In its new power plant, the generator will now produce up to 4,000 megawatts. Only made possible by an experienced transport crew and the spectacular technology of the SPMT.
I can finally start to take it easy. On the whole, we pulled it off smoothly. Mission complete.